In this episode, we talk about the failure of ISRO's first mission of 2026. We also talk about how a brief exchange over food led to a lawsuit between an Indian student and the Colorado Boulder University in the US. But we begin today by talking about the German Chancellor's visit to India and talk about some of the key highlights of the visit. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On Monday, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz arrived in New Delhi for a 2-day bilateral visit, his first since assuming office in May. After his meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the two sides signed 19 agreements, including roadmaps on defense industrial cooperation and higher education, a joint declaration on critical minerals and the semiconductor ecosystem, and the announcement of a visa-free transit regime for Indian travelers passing through Germany. This means Indian passport holders can now transit through German airports for onward flights without applying for a separate transit visa. To discuss these outcomes in detail, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to the Indian Express's diplomatic affairs editor Shubhajit Roy.
Shubhajit, how significant would you say this visit was, considering, like we mentioned, this was Merz's first visit since he assumed office?
So, this is his first visit outside the EU and NATO space, a first bilateral visit. So, he's gone to South Africa for the G20 summit, but outside the NATO or EU space, this is his first visit. And the fact that he comes here before going to China, which is a major trading partner of Germany, and in fact, German car industry is literally, or machine industry is dependent on China. This is an important signal to India. So, in the current circumstance, his visit has looked at 4 or 5 issues. First is defense and security. Second is economic partnership. Third is critical technology and emerging technology, which includes critical minerals, semiconductors. Fourth is the issue of higher education and skills development, which is also a major strength of the German education system and their whole skilling system. And the last point is about, a gesture towards Indians, giving them a visa-free transit when they cross Germany. So these are the 4 or 5 important takeaways from the current visit, and we can talk about each one of them as we go along.
And so let's talk about defense first. What do we know about the pact that has been signed by the two countries right now? And in what ways were we collaborating with Germany in this sector?
So India and Germany have been cooperating on small arms, weapons, but of late, the deal that has been in the works has been to buy submarines from Germany. And it has been under negotiations for years now. And it's a huge deal, about 70,000 crore worth of money that India needs to pay to buy these submarines. So that negotiations have almost sort of, progressed quite well. But in this particular visit, that deal hasn't been announced, or there's been no mention to that deal. But a roadmap for defense industrial cooperation has been agreed upon. And that is an important element because, Germany views Russia as a major rival, threat, enemy for European security, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Whereas India has a very close defense partnership with Russia. So despite India's proximity to Russia, Germany is willing to do a defense deal. It shows the kind of trust that they're putting on India, that whatever they sell to India, it will not ultimately, lead its way to Russian hands, or the equipment will not be compromised. So from that perspective, this defense industrial cooperation roadmap is an important element of the visit. And in that, they have agreed to not just technology partnerships, but also co-development and co-production of defense platforms and equipment. Basically, it means if submarines are being sold to India, tomorrow the two sides will develop it in India and co-produce and co-develop it here. And apart from submarines, there are a couple of more systems that the two sides are looking at. One is drones, and they call it counter unmanned aerial systems. And the other one is obstacle avoidance system for helicopters. So essentially, when helicopters are on their way, they need better sort of situational awareness and equipment and technology to avoid any obstacle. Obstacle meaning it could be another sort of incoming missile to another piece of equipment that comes. So Germany has this kind of technology, very high-end technology, which India is keen to procure and acquire in the coming years. So from that context, this defense roadmap is an important takeaway.
Right, and besides this, the other thing that the two countries are focusing on, like you said, is technology transfers, especially when it comes to critical minerals and semiconductors. There have been pacts signed regarding that as well. So talk about their importance for India.
So, see, India is really going big in the semiconductor mission. It wants to build a network so that these chips, these semiconductors can be built in India, and it can become the manufacturer just like in the lines of, say, Taiwan or Singapore, they have become. So India wants to follow that model. So it is working with different countries. Germany is also one of them. So to build up that semiconductor ecosystem, India is partnering with Germany. That is number one. And second is the technology needed to process these sort of equipment and the critical minerals that are needed. So they have agreed on a pact so that they can also get access to that. So that is the critical mineral / tech partnership that India has agreed on. And linked to that is the economic partnership, because as you know, the India-German economic relationship is very robust. It's about $50 billion, is the trade volume. And it's pretty balanced between the two sides, between products and services. And it would only go up. So India and Germany both want the free trade agreement between India and EU to be concluded so that Germans can also benefit from that. So Germany is keen that its cars, its machinery can enter the Indian market. And Germany is really looking at the luxury sort of segment. And in that segment, Germany feels they can really sell many more cars in India than so far, because there is more than 100% duties, tariffs that are put on these cars. So German Chancellor made a strong pitch to nudge India to conclude the agreement. And this FTA negotiations are, as we know, are at the last stage. And as the European Union leaders come here for the Republic Day parade and celebrations on 26th of January, it will be followed by an India-EU Leaders Summit on the 27th of January. So it is right now expected, and people are hopeful that negotiations will be completed and India-EU FTA can be signed.
And Shubhajit, in what way does this meeting help India with its upcoming meetings with the EU leaders, including the one with President Macron?
Yeah, so essentially because Germany is the economic powerhouse of Europe, and I think a quarter of entire Europe's trade volume with India is with Germany. So Germany is a huge player in terms of economic relationship with Europe. So essentially what Merz is saying is giving a nudge to India to conclude the negotiations, because they are the biggest players, in terms of volume. So they are giving a nudge to India to conclude the agreement as soon as possible by the time the EU leaders land in India.
Right, and besides this, like you mentioned, this recent visit also focused on skill development, right? Germany is looking to set up skill development centers in the country. Tell us, what does it have in mind? Why does it want to do that?
So Germany is like the superpower in skill development in the world. Their sort of quality control in terms of skills are very high. So Indian government has partnered with Germany on this account so that Indian skilled professionals can be trained by Germany and also can go and live and work in Germany and other parts of the world also. So this center that we are talking about, that is proposed to be set up in Hyderabad, so they will train professionals in handling renewable energy equipment, so essentially solar, wind, that kind of equipment. So that is the one thing that the Germans are keen on doing. Linked to that is also expanding the teaching of the German language in India, including in secondary schools, universities, and vocational education centers. And that is another aspect of it, because Germans are, for example, very keen to get Indian medical care professionals, essentially doctors, paramedics, nurses. Now, if you want to work in Germany as a healthcare professional, as a doctor or nurse, you need to know German. So, from that perspective, they want to ramp up German language education in India in schools, colleges, universities, and vocational centers as well.
Right, and along similar lines, Germany also wants more students going to the country, and we've seen this for the past few years, right? That the number of students going from India to Germany, they've increased quite a bit.
Absolutely. Shashank, so this is one of the real success stories of Germany as a destination for Indian students. As things have become difficult in UK and now increasingly in the US as well, Germany in the last 5-6 years has really catapulted to be this numero uno destination in Europe. So I remember about 5-6 years back, the number of Indian students in Germany were about less than 10,000, like 5 to 10,000. Today, the figures are 60,000 Indian students. And basically, they are studying in the best universities in Germany in STEM fields, basically science, technology, maths, those fields, and also getting jobs there. So, Indian diaspora, I understand, is almost 3 lakh people in Germany, and which is growing. And Germany is tapping into that talent market of India and is emerging to be this alternative destination in the non-English speaking world, if you had to say that. You know, if you take away US, UK, Canada, Australia, Germany is the biggest alternative destination for Indian students in the world.
And immigration for any country is a very contentious issue, especially now. Would you say Germany's immigration policy is more liberal than the other European countries?
So the immigration is a problem when it becomes illegal. So how Germany sees it is that the German government always says that illegal immigration is what we don't want. We want legal, safe immigration, so that you come through proper route and get a job, live here, work here, earn your living. And then if you want to go back, you go back, or if you want to stay, you stay, depending on your nature of work. But illegal immigration is something that is a problem, and that is a challenge that they make it very clear that they don't want, and they're very strict about it. And that is something that they're also conscious, because the right-wing group, the political party, which is the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, they have actually made this immigration a big issue, a hot button issue, just like Trump has done or the French right-wing parties have done. So they have caught on to that sort of agenda. But broadly, German government so far has been very, very open and welcoming to Indian nationals, to foreign nationals. And by the way, they're also very aware of the fact that when people come, they also bring their culture. So they are very accommodative. They don't want everyone to become German or integrated to the society. They want that, okay, you should also preserve your culture. So they in fact encourage foreign nationals to have their own temples, to let them celebrate their festivals, because they feel if the families stay together, if they follow their own culture, then the tension will be much lesser. They want the best talent to stay in Germany, and they are willing to go that extra mile to make them culturally comfortable in their own country.
And Shubhajit, right now we are going through a period where the rules-based world order has been disrupted. And we can see that in the capture of the Venezuelan president by the US, Trump looking to take over Greenland, and even in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. So do we know how Germany sees these concerns right now, and in what way its views and approach align with India on these geopolitical issues?
Well, both countries are of the view that this rules-based order needs to stay. It cannot be violated either by Russia or by US and or by China. So I think India and Germany see the value of the rules-based order because they are victims of someone in their backyard neighborhood. India feels China is violating the rules-based order in its backyard in the Indo-Pacific and across the world. Germany sees that with Russia. And both India and Germany can see how US is also now behaving like a rule breaker and not a rule follower. So on that note, on that particular aspect, both countries share the perception that rules must stay and they need to be respected. Where they differ is on the Russia-Ukraine war, where India has taken a much more nuanced and balanced sort of a very tightrope walk, where many Europeans feel India is closer to Russia than it is to Ukraine. Germany has, because it's at the heart of Europe and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it sees as threatening European security. It has taken a very strong stance in favor of Ukraine. It has in fact supplied weapons, given funding to Ukraine to kind of against Russia. So there is a divergence of views between India and Germany. But that has not come in the way of cooperation and agreeing on a basic thing that dialogue and diplomacy are the only way to end this war.
And next, we turn to the Indian Space Research Organization's first mission of the year. On Monday, ISRO suffered a major setback when its PSLV C-62 mission failed to place its payloads into the intended orbit. The rocket was carrying an Earth observation satellite along with 15 other payloads, all of which were lost. This marked the second failure of the PSLV in recent past, raising fresh questions about the reliability of ISRO's most successful launch vehicle. To understand why the mission failed and what this means for ISRO going forward, we are joined by the Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha. Amitabh, can you tell us about the PSLV C-62 mission? What was the mission about?
So this was a routine mission carrying commercial payloads, the kind of missions that Indian Space Research Organization or ISRO carries out from time to time. It had 16 different kinds of payloads, the primary satellite being an Earth observation satellite, EOS NV-1. So that's the name, but that's not important. But the primary satellite was that Earth observation satellite, and there were lots of other payloads, a lot of them actually commercial payloads from foreign countries as well. There were 5 of these were from Brazil, 1 from Nepal, 1 from the United Kingdom, and they were supposed to be deposited in different orbits in space. Now, this is the kind of launch or a mission that ISRO carries out routinely. There was nothing very special or something very unique about this particular mission. This is something that happens at regular intervals, almost regularly.
And what do we know about what went wrong?
So we do not know much about what exactly went wrong. What we do know is that, the kind of thing that was supposed to happen in the third stage of the rocket flight, it didn't go according to plan. So, there are different stages of the rocket, first and second and third and fourth. So this particular rocket that we were using, quite a trusted rocket, one of the main rockets that ISRO has been using for all sorts of missions. It's called PSLV or Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. So the first 2 stages were successful. Everything went off as planned. The mission lifted off nicely. It went out of the sort of Earth's atmosphere. The first stage detached itself from the rocket as planned. The second stage also went on smoothly, but in the third stage, somewhere around between 9 and 10 minutes from the lift-off time, the trajectory of the rocket began to deviate from the designed trajectory. And that's when we got to know that something had gone wrong. And eventually, the rocket wasn't able to sort of put all the satellites in their respective orbit. So the entire mission became a waste. All the payloads were lost essentially because things did not go as designed in the third stage.
And Amitabh, you write that this was the second back to back incident. When did the first one happen and what went wrong back then?
Right. So this is the second back-to-back failure for PSLV rocket. PSLV, as I said, has been carrying ISRO missions for a fairly long time. The first one went off in 1993, so it has a 3-decade long experience, fairly trusted and fairly reliable rocket. And before this particular mishap, PSLV had failed only 3 times. Once in the inaugural flight in 1993, it hadn't functioned as designed. Then I think there was the first big failure happened somewhere, I think in 2017. And then last year, again, which was a rare failure in May, when it was supposed to be carrying, again, a different Earth observation satellite it was carrying. And it met a very similar fate. The first, even in that case, in May last year's case, the PSLV, the first 2 stages went off smoothly, and in the third stage, it just wasn't. Something went wrong. Later on, there have been reports and there have been statements by ISRO officials who said there was a drop in pressure in the engine of the third stage, because of which the required velocity was not attained and the mission failed because of that. So that was the third failure of PSLV in more than 30 years.
Right. The Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, or the PSLV, is one of ISRO's most trusted launch vehicles. Can you tell us more about that?
This is an indigenously developed rocket, first flown way back in 1993. After that, it has done more than 60 successful missions. In fact, this is the rocket that has done the maximum number of missions for ISRO. Almost 60% of all the missions that ISRO has done has been done through this rocket. So really the most reliable rocket that ISRO has produced in its history. So this is a rocket which can also be sort of a repurposed for different kinds of missions. And in fact, it has done lots of different kinds of missions. And it was the main vehicle used for all sorts of commercial launches as well. It's what is called the 4-stage rocket, and it has had 60 or 62 successful missions. Fairly successful rocket and quite trusted during these times, had delivered all sorts of missions and all sorts of satellites had been carried by it. So it was fairly trusted rocket.
And Amitabh, like you mentioned, the C-62 mission failed in the third stage. So can you tell us how many stages are there and how does it work exactly?
Rockets, these stages actually refer to different physical parts of the rocket. And a rocket can be a 2-stage rocket, a 3-stage rocket, 4-stage rocket, maybe even 5-stage rockets. There is even a possibility of a single-stage rocket, although they are not used very often. So, how many stages a rocket would have depends on lots of different kinds of things. How much payload you want to carry to space, which particular orbit that you are targeting, where do you want to go into space, also the different kinds of the fuel that you want to use, or what is available to you, or what your system is accustomed to. Also about the considerations about economy and efficiency of the mission. So lots of considerations which decide how many stages a rocket would have. And in fact, different versions of a rocket can have different number of stages as well. So stages are just about different parts of the rocket which sequentially take over the propelling, or they propel the mission forward. And each of these stages has its own engine, has its own fuel. And once their job is done, they just detach themselves from the rocket midway through the journey and they fall off, and the next stage takes charge.
And Amitabh, how significant is this failure and what does this mean for ISRO?
So this is a little bit of a setback for ISRO because this is their main rocket. This is the one that is used for all sorts of commercial launches that ISRO does for companies and agencies within India, outside India. This earns a lot of revenue for ISRO as well. So this is a bit of a setback because two back-to-back failures of the rocket raises a little bit of question mark and is slightly more than what this space ecosystem actually is able to absorb, because there is very little margin of error in these kind of space missions. There's a lot that is riding on these missions, not just in terms of money, but there are like large corporate or national plans that are riding on these payloads that are being sent into space. So two failures back to back for the same rocket is a little more than discomforting for ISRO, because this in this kind of business and this kind of sector, reliability and safety is utmost concern. So this is a little bit of a serious kind of a situation for ISRO.
And in the end, we talk about an incident involving an Indian student studying in the US. In September 2023, Aditya Prakash, a PhD student at the University of Colorado Boulder's Anthropology Department, was heating his lunch, palak paneer, in a department microwave when a staff member asked him to stop. She complained about the smell and told him not to use the microwave. At the time, Prakash replied calmly that it was just food and he would leave once it was heated. But that brief exchange, he told the Indian Express's Vidisha Kontemala, changed everything. 2 years later, Prakash and his partner Urmi Bhattacharya, also a PhD student, reached a settlement with the university after filing a civil rights lawsuit. The university paid them $200,000, granted them master's degrees, but barred them from future study or employment there. Soon after, the couple returned to India permanently. They told Vidisha that the incident exposed what they experienced as systemic discrimination. After raising concerns, they alleged the university began retaliating. Through repeated meetings, complaints to student authorities, and loss of Bhattacharya's teaching assistant position without explanation. She even says that when she and other students brought Indian food soon after the incident, they were accused of inciting a riot on the campus. In their lawsuit, the couple pointed to a departmental kitchen policy that they said disproportionately affected the South Asian students, making many hesitant to open their lunch in shared spaces. They said the treatment caused emotional and mental distress. The university, in a statement, said it settled the case without admitting any wrongdoing and maintained that it followed proper procedures. Now, Prakash and Bhattacharya from Bhopal and Kolkata had invested their savings in their education in the US. Their first year passed without trouble. But then came the food episode. Prakash says he tried explaining that ideas of smell are culturally shaped and that food should not become a reason for exclusion. They say 29 fellow students even supported them, reminding the department that diversity should be celebrated, especially in anthropology. Bhattacharya feels their experience reflects a wider shift in the US, where institutions speak about inclusion but show less patience for discomfort when it comes to immigrants or people of color. Now, Vidisha writes that by the time the case ended, neither of them wanted to return to the US. Prakash told her that starting again in India is difficult but necessary. For him, the case was about sending a simple message that discrimination, even over something as ordinary as food, cannot be practiced with impunity. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.